And I'm going to turn this over. Okay, and I'm going to now turn this over to Linda to take over this part of the meeting.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to introduce our speaker this morning. I'm pleased to introduce Rosalyn Morrison, who's here from the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay. Rosalyn is passionate about the beautiful Southern Georgian Bay region. Her family has deep roots in the Simcoe Muskoka district for generations, and she and her husband now live in Craigleith. She's passionate about the power of community, formerly as Vice President, Community Initiatives and Senior Advisor to the CEO at the Toronto Foundation. She was involved in connecting philanthropy to community needs and opportunities. She was involved in partnerships relating to the 100 Resilient Cities project, which focuses on urbanization, globalization, and climate change. And she led the Toronto Foundation's team on the groundbreaking project to benchmark social capital. Rosalyn has held leadership roles in the arts and culture sector, and she is a recipient of the Crafts Ontario John and Barbara Mather Award for Lifetime Achievement, to mention just a few of her many accomplishments. Currently, Rosalyn serves as chair of the board of directors for the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and as a member of the Blue Mountain Village Foundation. And today, Rosalyn's going to speak to us about the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay and update us on the activities. They're really busy with a lot of different initiatives. And yeah, so I think some of the members may be interested in hearing about those and even possibly getting involved. So I'm pleased to welcome Rosalyn this morning to speak to us.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I'm just wondering if the screen share is enabled for me to use.
I believe it is. If you could just check the bottom of your screen.
Terrific.
Should be good.
That's great. But before we get there, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me today. It's been a terrific opening to your meeting. And I have to say, I haven't heard O Canada played in such a long time. It was very inspirational. So thank you for that. I do know a few of the people on the call. I feel like romper room, you know, I see Frank and I see Charlie, and it's great to see so many familiar faces and lots of friendly faces. So again, thank you so much for inviting me. There are many wonderful things that are going on in the world right now that hopefully we're all going to hang on to. You know, I feel personally compelled that through the pandemic, we've got to put all of our energies into building back a better world and a better future for our families and for the next generation. And in large part, that's why I've gotten involved with the Institute over the last few years. And I do have to say just a quick story about the synchronicity that's in the world. And when synchronicity happens, you know that magic is going to happen and there's lots of good things going on. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I guess it is now, my husband and I took some of our kids to Charlevoix, which is a beautiful region in Quebec, where the Saguenay River meets the St. Lawrence River. And it's very similar to the beauty that we enjoy here in Southern Georgian Bay, you know, the beautiful water, the St. Lawrence River, the beautiful mountains in the background, lots of artistic activity in that area, and lots of beautiful natural environmental beauty. And what I noticed there is that the farmers would talk to the restaurateurs, would talk to the gallery owners, would talk to the ecotourism people, and they seemed to be able to weave all of their talent together so that it was actually leveraged up across the region. And they'd created these beautiful books about Charlevoix and the area. And I turned to Mike, my husband, and I said, geez, you know, we should do something like that in Southern Georgian Bay. And of course, you know, he rolled his eyes, but he kept listening. And when I got back here, I opened up the On the Bay magazine, and lo and behold, there was a tiny little paragraph in it about the Institute of Southern Georgian Bay. And I thought, wow, my people are here. And I reached out and got to know the board members at the time. One of the founding board members is on the call today, Frank Tilley. And so I saw a lot of interests, common interests, and I got involved in 2017. And I think the reason why I got very excited is that I understood from the work that I did with the Toronto Foundation and the work that I've done in the arts for many decades, resonated to me with what the Institute's vision was and how we could actually harness the power of all of us in this beautiful place, and really work together to grow not only economic prosperity, but also social prosperity, and be the smartest, greenest, healthiest, and most caring region in Ontario. So that's quite a lofty vision and aspiration, but I know that we do have the talent, the energy, and the resources in this area to make it happen. People often say, well, what is the geographic boundary of Southern Georgian Bay? And this is what we're looking at generally when we talk about the area. We've got 6 municipalities stretching from the west with Meaford, town of Blue Mountains, Grey Highlands, and then into Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, and down to Clearview. The work that we do, though, is open. You know, if people from Midland or people from Owen Sound want to get involved, have great ideas, have knowledge that they'd like to share and energy, we welcome them wholeheartedly. But what we should realize is that we've got probably about 100,000 people living here, and whether that's full-time or with a seasonal home here. And that's a critical mass of people that we can work with. And then the power of place. All of us have been attracted to this area because it is so beautiful, and it's really got so much that we can engage with, and so much that we can help nurture and steward. One of the concepts of the Institute is that we wanted to begin connecting people across the region. And what Linda said in my bio, thank you, Linda, for that, was the social capital project that I worked on as one of my last projects with the Toronto Foundation. And social capital is basically the trust, the relationships, the neighborhood supports that are in any community. And that is so important. And as you know, as Rotarians, that connective tissue, that social capital is key to making things happen. And so what we really want to do with the Institute is do that connecting and knowledge sharing so that we can work together more easily. The mission, the purpose of the Institute is basically to do that connecting, to be conducting research and sharing knowledge from other research reports, and to be fostering collaborative projects. And I don't know about you, but this synchronicity seems to be gaining traction because I'm seeing and reading about collaboration happening in our region like never before. So that's a very positive outcome from the pandemic, that people, none of us really know how do we move through this effectively to build back better. And so there's a much more sense of openness to be able to listen deeply and learn, carve out that time for learning, and to begin to get to know what our commonalities are and how we might work together effectively. The Institute, like so many other organizations, like the Rotary Club, had to pivot to a virtual world last year. And it was a big stretch for us, and in fact, really helped the Institute move from a fledgling organization into something that was able to actually bring people from across the region together. So that's one of the positive things coming out of the pandemic, is the ability to gather as we are this morning. What we decided to do was to build on a very special event we had in the fall of 2019, learning from the leader of social innovation in Canada, Tanya Sermon, really what we should be thinking about to do things differently, and what was social innovation anyway. And so we built our online discussion series last year on that theme, and we called it Mapping Our Road to Recovery, so that we could again listen and learn together and innovate together in a way that would build a better future. And the topics that we explored through this series, which was 4 events and over 200 people participated, was to look at how do you use social innovation to build resilience. And that idea of resilience was something I learned in one of my Toronto Foundation projects. It was a global project to understand the changes that we were all experiencing in so many sectors, and how do we build resilience so that we can move through difficult times, through crises, through new challenges put before us, and survive and thrive and come out stronger in the end. So that was a wonderful conversation around inspiring regional resilience. The second piece that we built on was around the arts. And there are many people who previously to COVID thought, well, you know, I'm not really an arts supporter, an arts person. But I think that the pandemic has had us all leaning on Netflix for sure, and understanding the role of artists, actors, writers, the creatives in our midst, to help us understand how we might move through the pandemic in a different way. And so we had a discussion about, well, do you think we could create a regional arts strategy to help weave together all of the wonderful creatives that are in our midst here in the region and leverage up their work? The third event we had was around trying to figure out if the municipalities could come together for strategic discussions and strategic investments. And the last topic last year was trying to pull all of that together for a discussion around, okay, well, how do we build that future together? And so a lot of people say, well, that's a lot of talk, and that's fine to have a discussion series, but what actually comes out of all of that? And so what comes out of that are a few things that I'd like to share with you this morning. And one is the fact that we had a whole design team over the winter working on a regional arts and culture strategy. We have now 14 people, leaders from the 4 major sectors across the region, looking at a social investment strategy. We're continuing with the regional discussion platform with our Sustainable Future series. And we're all beginning to think about, well, what key data points should we be collectively measuring to know if we're progressing in the way that we want to do? You can check out our website. There's a whole section in the top menu on our website on reports, and you can find them all there. Collingwood has the most fabulous poet laureate named Claudia Ferraro. And if you haven't had the opportunity to hear her, meet her, chat with her, she is a wonderful harbinger of what's to come with the next generation. They are so smart. They are so talented. And we were extremely fortunate to have Claudia come as one of our final speakers in the arts series that we did over the winter to help build this new regional arts and culture strategy. And over time, what really became clear is that the arts are essential to our well-being. and that we should be paying a lot more attention to our artists in the region to help with all kinds of things that perhaps we haven't engaged them in before. And in order to do that effectively, three things came out of these strategy discussions. One was that we did need to begin networking, connecting people. You know, you've got your arts, visual artists over here, you've got your musicians over here, you've got your writers and poets over there, but there's not a lot of places where they can come together and really leverage up the things that they do best. So that is something that we're working on within the strategy that will be released in June. We're also working on the idea of building a website so that people can actually see what's going on across the region, to do a cultural asset mapping and actually visualize, and so you can connect with so much talent that's right here in Southern Georgian Bay. And then the last thing we thought about through the strategy discussions was, let's do sort of a cross-promotional marketing campaign where people begin to understand that, you know, you have all of this wealth right here in Southern Georgian Bay to tap into in terms of the creative aspect. And so, you know, have a tourism at home, if you will, campaign that's really shining a light on all of the wonderful artists here. There's a lot of conversation about how we're going to release this strategy. So if you are subscribing to our newsletter at www.tisgb.com, you'll keep up to date on when the strategy is going to be released and the follow-up events that are going to happen. The second big thing that came out of our mapping series last year was this idea of a social investment strategy. So, you know, the recovery task forces across the region were focused very much on business recovery, and that's terrific, that's important. And we began a conversation around, well, what about the not-for-profit organizations? And again, people go, well, that's not quite as important. However, what we did learn, and what we are very familiar with now through COVID, is that our not-for-profits are providing so many essential services that we have to start looking at them in a much different way. So how do we begin to think about investing in the social services that are provided by not-for-profits? And where do philanthropists come into this conversation? And so how do we all work together to create a social investment strategy? So we've got, as I mentioned, these 14 leaders from across the region meeting every 2 weeks, learning about the fact that, and really focusing on, that every single dollar we spend or lend or invest can have a positive effect on our communities. So we can be intentionally reinvesting in our communities every day if we learn more about how to do that. And so that's what the Social Finance Study Group is exploring, things like social procurement, where not only municipalities, but also businesses are being intentional about who and which organizations they're buying services from, so that there's always several check marks on the list after we've spent money, we're lending money, or we're investing money, that not only do we get some kind of economic return, but we also get a social return or an environmental return. And then in February, we were able to launch our Sustainable Future discussion series. We had the Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Elizabeth Dowdeswell, as our keynote speaker, and we began to unpack a conversation that she started in February of, let's see, that would have been February 2020, just last year, about the fact that Collingwood had decided that they wanted to become a model community for the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, goal number 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. Now, if you're not familiar with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, you're not alone. However, Canada and 192 other countries signed on to these goals in 2015. And 2030 is a big milestone marker in trying to achieve these goals, which are holistic in nature and are all interconnected. So we wanted to begin to unpack our sustainable future, and the Lieutenant Governor was able to help us understand in a very simple way why the Sustainable Development Goals were so important. So she was also involved in last September's United Nations Habitat in Towns Collingwood World Summit, where there were speakers from all over the world talking about the SDGs, as they're called, and how do we create integrated, resilient, and equitable transformations towards sustainability. So that's the concept for the discussion series, which is now happening. The Sustainable Development Goal 11 is extremely important because it talks about all the things that are important to us, talks about housing, talks about environmental challenges, talks about transportation challenges. Things like integrated planning and management and how we start to leverage up and pool resources, talks about protecting cultural and natural heritage, which we all love in our area for sure. And how do we provide more access to people to this green space and public space and support positive economic, social, and environmental links between urban and rural, which is very important to our area. So really, it's all about how do we meet today's needs, the planet, people, economic vitality, without compromising the needs of future generations. The Sustainable Development Goals, as I mentioned, there's 17 of them, and they're all interconnected. You really can't talk about a labor force, as an example, without talking about housing or transportation. Can't talk about health without understanding that, you know, the environment or infrastructure affects our health in many ways. So once you've got some time, just Google UN Sustainable Development Goals, and you can begin to dive into this amazing holistic view of what our future could look like. The Sustainable Future Series, as I mentioned, kicked off in February with the Lieutenant Governor. Then we were able to bring the chief administration officers from across the region together for the very first time. And so the mission of the Institute also includes, how do we accelerate progress? How do we bring people together in ways that perhaps they've never been brought together before, to start building those relationships so that they can talk comfortably about how they might pool resources and work together. And it was a very honest and insightful conversation that we had with them in March. In April, we had two extraordinary speakers. Again, we brought back Tanya Sermon from the Center for Social Innovation and Social Innovation Canada. And we also had Toby Heaps from Corporate Knights talking with us about how, again, we could intentionally build our economies in a way that we were getting that triple bottom line approach. We want economic vitality. We also want to protect our planet. And we also want positive social outcomes. So they were able to share success stories with us from other jurisdictions about how it's being done. Just quite recently, we had the mayors come together from across the region to talk about the changing role of municipalities. You know, you might not think that housing falls within the municipal purview. However, you know, most of us know housing is one of our biggest issues now in our region. And so how do we see the changing role of municipalities? How can business, not-for-profit philanthropists work together with municipal governments to address some of these issues? Whether we think it's in our lane or not, the lanes and the lines are blurring, not only geographically, but also politically. And it's key that we are all working together on these issues to accelerate progress. In June, we're going to have a wonderful presentation by Sustainable Waterloo on what they're doing for proactive approaches to environmental challenges. In October, we're going to have a great event on sustainable, attainable, affordable housing, whatever we want to call it. It's really looking at the housing continuum and what kind of housing stock and range do we need to support our existing economy and the new economies that we want to develop here. And then in November, we wind up the series looking at how best we can invest in innovation districts in our communities and how best we can begin to link them together. So again, we can accelerate discussion and progress and collaboration. And so we never do anything on our own. The Institute is a big believer in the positive outcomes of collaboration. And we're very fortunate for this series to are working with 5 municipalities on it. And we've got some wonderful business partners too, the Center for Business, Julia White and the Cooperators, and Greenland Consulting Engineers. And so my invitation to you is to think about how you can get involved. You're already, as Rotarians, very deeply passionate about your communities and involved in projects. The Institute should not be regarded as one more thing. It really is something that groups and individuals can plug into to amplify their work and the kind of effect that they want to see in our communities. So there are several ways that you can become involved. We're going to be launching our first ever membership campaign in June. Please do participate in our events. If you subscribe to the newsletter, then you will get all the notices of the events. Through COVID, like many other organizations, the events are at no cost because we have the support of municipalities and our business partners, but we do need to show a critical mass of community leaders who are supporting the programming as well. Please do buy local, it makes a difference, and support new ideas for building back better. And so please visit our website. Again, it's www.tisgb.com to see how you can get involved and to see the fabulous work that's going on across our region. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and I really do appreciate the invitation to speak with you today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Rosalyn. Does anyone have any questions for her? You covered a lot.
Great presentation, Rosalyn. Thank you very much. Going back to your the Building the Next Economy program back in April with Tanya and Toby, can you give me an example of some initiative that stood out to you that you think, or your group thinks that South Georgian Bay should adopt?
I think two come to mind, and one is this whole notion of how do we look at energy, and how do we look at retrofitting our buildings? How do we look at ensuring that new development is engaging with most current technologies and building practices for sustainability? So I think that when you start to think about, okay, what could change, then you link that with what businesses, what not-for-profits could be supported, invested in, or created in our region that could help support that supply chain. And so it's thinking, what's the vision that we want? And then how do we build the conditions for success to achieve that vision? The second one was around housing and the kind of housing labs that are being created to bring together developers, businesses, municipalities, not-for-profits, to imagine how to start accelerating progress on business, on creating the kind of housing stock that's actually required. You know, we talk about the labor force here being in large part service industry. And so, as we know, those people working in the service industry probably earn $15 an hour. And so the question becomes, well, if we currently have a service industry economy in large part, and these people are making $15 an hour, where are they living? Because that kind of housing stock is not available in our region. So Toby and Tanya were really able to connect the dots for us in a way that people sort of go, huh, oh, okay, I get it. So you can be intentional about what kind of future we want, and therefore, what are we investing in? And what do we do to bring groups together so that we're co-creating it together? It's not an us or them conversation any longer. That is so 20th century. It really is, how do we develop enough relationships and trust and knowledge to do things differently? And Toby and Tanya did that really very well. They talked about infrastructure in a way that can be done effectively, sustainably, and supported through investment. So there's a lot of things that are happening in our region that we should be paying attention to. And you can find their presentation on our website, on our YouTube channel.
Okay, thank you.
Rosalyn, great presentation. Super. Thanks so much. You know, coming together with the region is one of the goals of the Institute. And I wonder if you could give a couple of good examples in the past of how the 5 municipalities have worked together. And then also maybe a couple of examples of where you think we can do even better.
Well, you know, one of the things, and again, it's kind of pandemic related, is that we simply don't have enough doctors in our region. And so the municipalities are coming together to build a joint physician recruitment committee. So that's a great example where you have a need, and instead of every municipality trying to figure out a solution and to, you know, throw in their own resources at it, just pause. So working together takes upfront pause, listening, deep listening, discussing, and understanding, okay, well, how could we work together, and then pool our resources so that we can accelerate success. So that is a great example of how the municipalities are coming together on that front. You know, how we might do things better is another example in Collingwood, where Collingwood, I believe, announced a climate emergency, I think it was in 2019. And so, you know, we know that the climate is changing, and how do we work together on that? So what they decided to do is hire a climate specialist to begin that discussion, which is great. That's a check. How we might do that differently across the region would be, okay, could all the municipalities pool resources to hire someone who can oversee shifts in existing departments that could achieve way more, and that's the power of collaboration, could achieve way more than any one individual person at any one municipality could achieve on their own. So that's the shift in thinking that needs to happen, and that's how we can accelerate and leverage up what we want to have happen.
Hey, this is Charlie Rouse. You do a great job, by the way, with the Institute. Thanks. One of the things I've been wondering about is moving the county line. And I would imagine that's probably been something on everybody's minds for a long, long time. I talked to Brian Saunderson about it, and he hemmed and hawed and said, you know, we get a lot of money transfers from Simcoe County. And I said, well, it'd probably be a good idea to either make us Grey County or enlarge Simcoe County, but I think it'd be more practical for us to become part of Grey County. I'm wondering if you're starting to sense whether that movement may be actually gaining momentum or whether it's completely dead.
Well, Charlie, I'm thinking about how I should answer your question. And I like to spend a lot of my volunteer time not on politics, if you can believe it, but on people, regardless of what sector they're involved in, and figuring out how we could work together on any given issue. So rather than invest my time on notions of geographic boundaries, which in large part often aren't meaningful or helpful, how do we actually deal with the issues? So that's how I've decided to answer your question.
Okay. Now, because there's these distinct municipalities and there's always been like this silo mentality here.
Right.
And what we've got to do is try to become more regionalized. And I just hope people start thinking that way. It'd save a lot of money, resources, and make us more effective.
And I agree with you. And what's interesting is that if you take the politics out of it and you bring people together to deal with the issues, I believe we'll have lots more progress on getting to where we all want to get to. And at the same time, celebrating and emphasizing the local, because each municipality has a very different flavor, right? And that's why we love them.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Other questions? Sorry, I can't see if anybody. Okay. That's all?
Yeah, now we can
Wrap up. Rosalyn, as you can see, thank you so much. That was excellent information you shared with us this morning. Very inspiring, very exciting. And yes, thank you.
My pleasure.
I would recommend everyone sign up for the newsletter that hasn't, because it does keep us posted on the activities and the series and things that are going on as well. To thank you on behalf of the club, we'll be vaccinating 25 children against polio.
Fantastic.
And, yeah. So thank you again. We really appreciate you coming this morning and sharing the important work the Institute's doing.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So now we're going to ask Sue to take over the meeting for a little while for our happy time, which is always great fun.
Good morning, everyone. I will start with our birthday and anniversary report first. Pretty slim pickings for birthdays in the latter part of May and the beginning of June, but we do have Vern's birthday coming up on the 29th, which I think is Saturday. And I haven't seen Vern out to meetings, so I might make an effort to reach out to him, and perhaps some of you might be able to send him a birthday wish. For spouse birthdays, Shelley's husband, Mike, has a birthday coming up on the 1st of June. My husband, Tom, has a birthday coming up on the 8th of June. And we also have some pretty big anniversaries, wedding anniversaries. Lauren and Sue Kenny will celebrate 47 years on the 7th of June. And President Michael and Treasurer Karen will celebrate 38 years on the 11th of June. And last but not least, the date or the anniversary of joining Rotary. Past President Juanita Hodson joined Rotary 10 years ago on the 2nd of June. Congratulations. So now for some happy bucks. I'll look for hands up or some sort of reaction, arms waving.
I'll start master of ceremonies there. 10 years for Miss Sue telling me that, what do you mean I couldn't be a Rotarian? Sure you can. Anybody can be a Rotarian. I'm like, but I don't have a job. At that point I didn't. So thank you for including me in your Rotary journey and being a big part of mine, Miss Sue.
You're welcome.
What's that, Juanita?
My big mouth.
$10 for 10 years, Miss Karen.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Thank you. John
Okay.
Stransky just said it felt like 20 years. Just saying, I think he should be fined. You're so busted.
I don't
He
know.
thought he could get away with it on Zoom,
Oh,
eh?
look at his face.
I think you've been hacked. I have no idea what you're talking about.
So John,
like-
does that mean you have a happy 20 for Juanita being in
I
Rotary?
actually have a happy 10 from Lori Blair, who sent me a note, and she unfortunately had to leave early. And today is her grandson Parker's first birthday.
Great.
Nice.
And I will absolutely put in a happy 10 for President Juanita being a part of our club for 10 years.
Okay, I have one, Sue. Karen and I were fortunate enough yesterday afternoon to get our second shot of the vaccine.
Yay.
So we're very pleased.
Good.
Awesome.
It also means we're closer to being able to see our first grandchild, who we have not seen since she was born.
Yeah, so I think that's deserves $10 there for sure. Or whatever you want to put in, Karen.
Yes, dear.
He's a good man.
Okay, I think I'm
Bonnie,
done.
your
Oh,
hand up.
wait,
I'm going to put
John-
in one.
John Van Laar.
Happy Pride. Trying
Okay.
to join the 50-50 club.
Excellent. Thank you, John. And I think Connie has one as well.
Yes, I do have 10 happy bucks. I wanted to say that as much as losing my mom was, heartbreaking, we certainly had the spirit of a big, big family getting together, doing food and, helping lots of grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren understand and feel the love of everybody. And we certainly had the wonderful spirit of my mom with us. And my brother Brad announced that he sent a message to St. Peter's and made sure that gate was wide open because my mom had my dad waiting for her since 1996. So it was a good celebration. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Connie.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. Good. Good.
Okay, I think that's
Hey.
where we should maybe end Happy Bucks.
Thank you,
Okay,
Sue. I'd just like to mention, by the way, that because of the way we're doing Happy Bucks for the last couple of months, all donations will be tax receivable because we're able to track them, unlike when we throw toonies into our bucket. I'm able to track this. So thank you, everybody, for all your donations.
Okay, great. All right. Our next meeting is going to be on June the 10th, and Kim's husband, Mike Giffen, will be speaking to us on the subject of mental health and the effects of our current situation, the pandemic, et cetera, and how it's in affecting people and the mental health of our citizens. It's not just about youth, it's a more general presentation, and we really look forward to that. If there's nothing else for the good of Rotary, then I'll call this meeting adjourned.
You can